Tonight we're obviously talking about awards and how to put your best foot forward. And we've got Maureen, LDI Executive Officer, to talk about how to actually submit the things into LDI to be able to get judged. We've got Sally Todd, a previous awards judge from many, many years, and we always thank you for donating your time to be able to judge these awards for us. And then we've got Steve from Outhouse Design to talk about one of his particular projects, but also all the benefits that come with winning the awards as well. So, Maureen, I might throw it over to you to start.
Okay.
And tell us about how we need to do things to best get everything through.
Okay. The first piece of advice is read everything carefully before you start. The information is all there on the website about what you need to submit. The judging forms are there telling you how they're going to judge. Read it through and prepare your entry before you try to upload anything. The project needs to be given a title, and the reason for that is we use the title to identify the project primarily for judging purposes, particularly if you have more than one entry in a category. It's not just your member number we need to have a project title. So it's not just a nothing title, it's an important part of the process. And if you have that title on all your documents, it means that we make sure we keep all the documents for the entry together, that they don't get separated and mixed up. So you need to take your name and your business name off all the documents. So all that's left there is your member number and your project title. You need to have a title that identifies your project, and you can be quite creative, but don't have one that is too close to the address of the property, because we do keep the address private. So you might do something in Bondi. So you could call it the Bondi Retreat or something, but don't say Bondi Smith Street, just so keep it reasonably generic, but so it can be identified in case there's another project by another member in Bondi. So just give a little bit of thought to that, but it does get used in a lot of ways. As I say, it's used for judging. It's used when we do social media posts of finalists, and it's used on the website. It's used on certificates. So that project name comes up quite a few different times. So just give some thought to that. The other thing is there are 3 key documents that you are asked to submit. The written statement, which is really the client brief, the constraints and opportunities, and the scope of works. Please don't try to put them all together in one document, because that means I have to then try to separate them out, or the judges have to try to separate out what's what. We really need them as individual documents. And that's why I say read it through and think about it first, and map out what you're going to put in each document. There is understandably going to be some repetition, because the client brief might say, replace the rear fence, and then you might get into the scope of works or constraints and opportunities, and there might be a constraint that the neighbour only wants a wooden fence or something. So you might have some degree of duplication between them, but make them very separate documents. Don't do the same document and upload it 3 times, because then I have to compare them and make sure there's nothing different about them. And I say, don't just try to amalgamate it all into one and just put it in once. So stick to those headings, plan it out first, and keep to the word limits, and make it easy for me and easy for the judges. And again, it flows on, because we use things like the client brief and the constraints and opportunities that you had to overcome. We use that in preparing the presentation for the awards night, and we use it on the website. So the clearer those documents are, the easier it is for me, the easier it is for the person preparing the presentation, the website, and for the judging. Okay. For the design documents, you should be able to upload all the documents without too much trouble. There should be enough space there on the upload button there on the website. We're not asking for detailed construction documents, so you shouldn't have mountains of documents. The type of exception there might be is if you're entering a master plan, in which case you could have quite a considerable document to enter. If you get to a situation where you can't upload it, email me and tell me that you're sending it through. You might send it by Dropbox or WeTransfer or just an email if you can manage that. The main thing is let me know what you're sending, and when you send it through, have it clearly labeled as to what entry it relates to, your member number, the project title, so that I know what I'm putting it with, because I will combine it in with what you submit online, because I have to download everything and create a file for them anyway. So I can put it in, but I need to know what category it is, what your member number is, and what the project title is. And most of all, I need to know to expect the document's coming, so that when I'm looking at the entry form that comes through and it looks like there's a whole lot missing, I'll know that it's going to come through. But I think master plan's probably the main one that you're likely to come across that problem. The other thing's the photographs. And the thing is, it is a design competition, so it's primarily on your designs, but the photographs are there to show the judges sort of how it came out. And it's also, of course, very important for us for promoting it when we announce the finalists, for the presentation, for the website, for magazines. We use those photographs a lot. So you need to try to put in the best photographs you can. But sometimes there are circumstances that happen and you can't have them ready as you want them at the time. We had one year where it just kept raining, and it rained for weeks, and people could not get their photographs done. And they put in the best they could, and often, the ones you take on your phone, but at least there's photographs there. And then they submitted them after, as long as I get the photographs in time to send them off to the judges. It takes me about 2 weeks to get all the entries into the judging format. So there's a little bit of leeway there to get the photographs through. And sometimes you have a situation where everyone's trying to book the photographer at the same time. We had one last year where the photographer wasn't coming till after the entries closed. They put in really good photographs that they had anyway, but when they were announced as a finalist, we went back to them and said, we knew you were having professional photos done. Can you now give them to us? Or there might be a situation where your design is going to be used in a magazine and we need high-res photos, and we might have to go back to you for them. So don't panic if the photographs aren't kind of quite falling into place at the time. There is a bit of leeway to fit them in later. And the other thing is, where at this time of the year, it's winter, you might not have the garden looking quite as pretty as it might look in a few months from now. If down the track you get lovely photos because all your plants are beautifully in flower, and send them through to us, because we use the same photos over and over again with awards. And sometimes it's nice to have a refresh if you've got some really good photos and you've won an award and you say, hey, I've got something better to help promote this. That's great. We can put that into social media and whatever and have some fresh material. So the judges, we pick up all skilled in assessing the designs. So if it shows a plant that's in a particular spot and it's not in flower at the moment, well, they have the skills to know, well, that's the right place to put that plant, and it's going to look great when it's flowering. So don't get too despondent if you've got winter photos. But yeah, there is some scope to add photos in later. Remember that communication's key. If you're running into any problems, if you can't get your photos done, if you can't upload a document, contact me. Let me know you're having a problem, and there's probably nothing that's going to come up for you that hasn't come up before. One example that we have is the permission form for the clients. We have to have that permission form before we go public with anything. So if you become a finalist and we want to promote you and we don't have the permission form, then there's a problem. Sometimes people have given verbal permission and then they've gone overseas for 2 months. That's not a problem at the point where you're entering the awards, as long as you can get it to us before the finalists are announced. So put your entry in regardless. Let me know that form is coming. That's the main thing. As I say, it's really about communicating with me if you run into any problems like that, because there's usually a way around them. So that's basically the main points that I wanted to cover. Say, crucially, read everything first, prepare it, map it out before you try to upload anything on the website. But there's a lot of information there. Okay.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Maureen. We might jump over to Sally. Can you talk to us about judging from that side of things, and what are some tips and tricks for our members to get some good results?
No problems, Paul. All right, well, I've just written down a bit of a list of some suggestions for members to improve their overall score for the design section. Things that I've noticed from year to year that could be improved on. So I'm just sort of going to go through them. A few of them will pick up on things that Maureen mentioned as well. I think the first thing is to clearly mark your plans as to the area to be judged, even stating the exact design area, because sometimes people have not entered into the correct category, I find, and sometimes only part of the plan is completed because people do things in stages, yet people might put the front and backyard in, yet they're only actually wanting the backyard judged. So you need to be really clear on that, because some of the design sections, like one I've got here, is 100 to 300 square metres. So we as judges have to check that it's the right area. So that's probably the first one. The next one is the brief. This also needs to be from the client's point of view, and most entries need to cover a lot more detail. Details such as a maintenance level, colour schemes, design intent, how clients want to use the space, and the difficult one, the budget, because that does come up a number of times. This section is critical as there's so many marks throughout the mark sheet that relate back to the brief. So did they, address the brief, that type of thing? There's a lot of marks throughout. So that brief is really, to me, one of the most important parts. And a mistake that designers often make in this section is that they talk about it from their own point of view, not the client's point of view, and they don't meet all those requirements. So that's a good starting point to think about. The next one is the scope of work issues. It's also important to state what the designers have been employed to provide and any work that's outsourced. So, for example, there may be an attractive pergola, but this was not part of the design brief, and it was actually designed by the builder of the house. So it's really important when we're actually marking, we look at plans and we say, well, there's not a plan for this or that, or what have they actually done? That needs to be really clearly stated. Also, I think Maureen mentioned we're not marking on the standard of construction, but certainly the aesthetics and function of it. So the choice of materials, the pattern, unity with the surroundings, and that's a big part of section C. So even though it's not actually on the way it's constructed, it very much is the way it looks in the photos that we actually, can visualize. Evaluation of the existing site. This is good to include, but I would like to say that they say you only need 100 words, which I think is very limiting, especially because there's 3 marks here. So many designers don't even mention topography, which is a really important part. So I feel this section could definitely be improved on. Maureen mentioned photographs. It's interesting when you're looking at the projects. I would recommend that people enter the projects when the plants have established. So particularly if they're starting with really small plants, I think you need to give it at least a year or so before you actually enter, because it does make a big difference when you're looking at the photographs. And I also think it's really important with the photographs to make sure that they're maintained before the photos are taken, so there's not lots of weeds and things like that. It can make a big difference to the look of the project. I've also written down, it also helps if photographs are numbered and you briefly specify the aerial elements that the photos depict. So this is a before photo of the front yard or that type of thing. The really good entries do actually do that. And I was just going to mention that most of the entries put in between around 10 to 15 photos. You don't have to, but that's just a bit of a guideline. So you must provide before, progress and finish photographs. And this is an area where designers lose marks if they don't have any before photos, because we've got nothing to compare with what was there. And it's also good, as well as having a lot of small area photos, to have a bit of an overall photo of the actual design area, so the front yard, the backyard, etc. It's also important that the plans are legible and not too difficult to open on the computer. And we definitely need to make sure that they are scaled so that we can actually view that as well. I also mentioned before that many plans do actually not include levels. There's nothing about the topography, and that's certainly something that's specified that they need to include. Just going through, got time for a bit more, Paul. So the material schedule, which is quite a few marks as well. So for this, sometimes designers actually provide pictures of all the materials that they include, but it's also important that the plans state the exact size and the materials of the pavers. So we need that sort of detail, not just that it's a bluestone paver or whatever. You need to give, you know, as much detail as you can, particularly if someone's going to be costing the job. The marks for wow factor and originality are also very high in the design section. So it's good to enter design projects that introduce new elements and also give a great first impression when you look at the photos. They're the ones that really do well. So something that's a little bit creative and different. Another thing I've got that I often see plans that do not translate to the landscape that is constructed. So I really believe that if this is the case, the plans need to be adjusted before submitting, or notes need to be included to say why there are changes. So for example, you might specify that you use the bluestone pavers before, but in the design, when we look at it, they've got granite pavers, and that's fine. Sometimes materials aren't available, but I think it's either important to change them in the plans or to make a note as to why those changes have taken place. What else we've got there? Planting plans and schedules. These are usually easier to follow if they're in tabular form. The key or code for plants should really relate to the botanical name and ideally be in alphabetical order. And some of the best presentations have a planting palette, which shows the client a small snapshot of the proposed plant. So is it a topiary plant? Is it a climber? That type of thing. So I think they're probably the main ones that I've got. I know a couple more I've got down here, sorry. Also, I was just saying the plant palette often shows the client plant colours, texture and the look the designer wants to achieve. And often the botanical names are not correct, so that's something to really check very carefully. And also, if you're asking for a plant schedule, you need to have the plant numbers and also notes about the sizing of the plants that you want to install as well. What else have I got here? And that I also often note that some of the plants have changed from what's in the plant schedule. So as I mentioned before, you should also make a note explaining why plants have been substituted. I understand this often has to happen, but I think there should be a note about that. And for example, the clients changed some of the plants from the original schedule, or some of the plants have died or they weren't suitable. We need to look at that because that's certainly part of the marking. Are the plants fit for purpose and suitable? And if we notice a lot of them have changed, it makes you wonder why that is. So I think that's a really important part. And in the plant section, I also mentioned they're marked on suitability, climate, aspect, spacing, placement. So this is a really important area to make sure that we have that level of detail. And just the last 2 points. For the budget, there's no direct marks for specifying the budget, but it's an important part of the brief and selection criteria for elements in the design. So the budget range is actually written down. Maureen's got it in her notes. It's part of the submission requirements. I know it's always difficult to have, but I think that's important when you're looking at the design and you understand why maybe they've chosen gravel over, a rigid paver or something, and you can understand that better if you've seen what the budget is. And the last one is section elevational 3D images. Ideally, the elevational section drawings should take a slice through the landscape to give the client a visual of how the landscape will look. It is specified that you need to have either that or the 3D. I find most of the entries don't have the 3D, but if you're doing section or elevation, ideally a slice through the landscape, just to give you a good idea of the levels and the overall visual of what it's going to look like. And I think I mentioned before that construction details are not required for this section either, in the section and elevation. So hopefully a few tips there.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Sally. That's a wealth of knowledge there for everybody. Thank you. So Steve, will we flow straight through to you? Maureen, could you throw access across to Steve, and so he can share his screen and maybe show us your plans, and tell us all about your point of view from a winner of the awards.
Sure. I felt slightly uncomfortable when it was like a masterclass, and I'm like, okay, every time that I do an awards, I know I should say this, but every time I do an awards, I'm always learning. Okay, that's my point. And when I started going into the awards in 2010, basically I didn't want to go into the awards. I didn't think I was good enough to go into the awards. I didn't think our work was good enough to go into the awards. And the only reason I went into the awards is because somebody that I was working with said, if you don't put it in, I will put it in for you. And the reason why I bring that up is that my attitude of going into the awards sort of 10, 12 years ago, and why I did it then and how I feel about it now has dramatically changed over those years. So yes, we're going to show you an award-winning garden. It was great. And the reason why I'm sitting here, and of course, my name is not Katrine Mardini on screen, because this very important person is sitting next to me, is because Katrine knows I get very passionate about awards, to the point that I'm just too competitive, but it means a bit more to me now. But I believe that the awards are so much more than winning an award. And the reason why Katrine's with me is because she's seen our journey over the years, and also has been instrumental when we've gone from, lessons learned, grab our photos, we've run out of time, all the things that Maureen talks about. So I can't reinforce that enough. But I suppose my point, and I said to Paul, well, what project do you want us to show you? And we spoke about this particular one. All the projects that we have put in over the years have one common thread. They resonate with me, they resonate with the team, they have that sense that we're very proud, that sense that we truly believe even before we go into the awards, we're winners. And I would say to people, put in a project to the awards that makes you feel that way, but also back yourself, because you are your hardest, harshest critic. So what you believe may not be good enough, you just don't know until you have a go. And I really want to stress that. And the reason why I was so keen to talk tonight and involve Katrine is because the more people in the awards, the higher the competition, the more opportunity, the more we learn, the more that other people see new projects, the more we see new materials. It's not just good for the person that puts in, it's good for the whole community of design. And I think that the awards is an instrumental factor for us to continue growing as an organisation. So I really believe in the awards. What I would say is that Maureen's tips, and again, thank you very much, Sally, they ring so true. So what I would say is there's the emotional component of going into the awards. And I want to talk about it as a few tips and experiences we've learned. Yes, we want to talk about this project, but also I broke it into why the benefit for our business, and I want to talk about the benefit for me and our team personally. So if we look at this particular project, and we'll bring it up, now don't forget this was done not that long ago, but the reason why it was great to select this project is because it was a reasonably complicated project, but I personally believe that your application does not need to be complicated. I see many landscape designs in my role. I will say the simpler your application, the cleaner, the clearer your application, the better your application, because I personally look at it and say, we can read it, everybody can read it. So when we look at our designs here, yes, with our clients, we do 3Ds, we do fly-throughs, we do all these other things for them. But as Katrine's showing you that we've actually got, it's a basic landscape plan, and it's a basic set out plan, and it's a basic set of details. That doesn't mean basic being, you know, it's not delivering. It's actually there to actually say that is what our judges need to see. So I don't know if you can just sort of look at that, Katrine, for us. And I think that one of the ones we sort of brought up is a simple landscape plan. And again, in my view, it was factual information that we can provide to our judge. This is basically factual information that we provide to our clients and our projects, because the contractors need to know simply how it works. Everybody needs to know how it works. So it's cleanly laid out. It's there. It's pretty easy to look at. So our landscape plan, I think, ticks the box from that point of view. And as Maureen said, keep it clean, keep it simple, and that's how you should do it. So we're just going to pull up a couple of plans that we submitted simply to Maureen and the judges. But what I would say is that when we actually look at any job that we go to, and I learned this from a very experienced landscape designer, and he said to me, every time you go to a site, think to yourself, is this going to potentially go into the Landscape Design Awards? Ask yourself that question. And because when you actually arrive at the site, that's where your mindset goes. It is, what photos am I taking? What before shots? What information do I need to capture to show the complexity of this project? How that works? And so that I can show, yes, most importantly, my team and how we work and how I'm designing it. But at the end of the day, we need to say, you know what, we do have that before shot or that detail to show the complexity of this site. So I don't know if you want to just pull up some of those other plans, Katrine, but this particular project, it was very much, you know, we've got the 3Ds there, and that showed angles that are relevant to the landscape plan. So when we were talking about the landscape plan in our submission, we ensured that our 3Ds were aligning with our description. So there's no point creating a description, as we talked about earlier, Sally, in that my job is to get a brief really tight, condense it really tight. So I'm going to talk about a flow of a seat, or I'm going to talk about clean lines, or I'm going to talk about these things. So my image, in my opinion, needs to really emphasize that. So I need to look at this like a judge might look at it. And if I talk about it, it must be in an image. So these are just my opinions on what we do. So our 3Ds are really, really clean and clear. So we're just showing you the 3Ds of that particular project. And what I would also say is, when you look, and this is a really good point, Sally, when you look at your planting, you're only human. So at the end of the day, if you have, for whatever reason, this particular project, the client wanted a water feature, it was their water feature, it was given to them, God knows how long ago, own that. I'm happy to turn around and say, water feature by client. That's the water feature. As long as I don't write in my description that I designed this water feature, just own and be truthful and be honest, and you know, put it out there as to what a true design process was, because at the end of the day, you are being judged by designers and professionals, and they understand that. And I think Sally's point is really valid about that. So I think that clarity and making sure it's clear is very, very important. And my job, I look at it and say, if I can make the judge's job simpler, if I can make it easier, if I can make it more efficient, and it's a nice clean process for them, then that's what we need to do. And that's why we try and keep our plans really simple. You will see we do not put more than we need to. It's not because we don't either have it, but there's no point showing other bits of information if it's not relevant to the judge. And I think that what you were saying, Maureen, I just need to really emphasize my learning. When I started this, and I have put projects into the LDA awards and they've gone nowhere. That's okay. What I believe is beautiful doesn't mean that the judges believe it's beautiful. But what I realized then was, don't get frustrated, don't get unhappy. Why didn't I win? Why didn't I do this? And whatever. Of course, you're passionate. But one big learning for me was absolutely go through every single line item. That is the criteria. Every single one. And say to yourself, am I hitting? If there's 5 points, am I getting potentially 5 points? And it is down to that detail and making sure that, you know, get your basics right, which you should do as your client anyway. These are client plans. You shouldn't have to go through and change a lot of this stuff because that's what you do, right? So just make sure, though, you are really clear and hitting every single mark, because that's what your job is. And you can be awarded on a project or not being awarded on a project simply because you forget some of the fundamentals, or you believe that you go on talking about some amazing constructed component. You are not entering into the landscape contractors. You are entering into the landscape design, but you need to make sure you understand what you're being judged on. And I think Sally's points are really, really relevant. So get simple planting plan and information. And then what we did do on this project, because project specific, we talked about our details, because it wasn't so much, okay, I'm showing you construction details, but the point of this project was that it's a very unique location. And so we had to, the client's brief and how we answered that brief, and when we look at the 3Ds on the X-Train, is that we're actually saying we needed to ponder and consider the complexities of the design, and we need to make sure we showed our judges, but this is part of our package that was important for our client, and it was an important component for the judges to understand. This wasn't a flat surface. This wasn't a case we had no services. It wasn't a case that, you know, it was a tiny micro space. And I know we looked at planes that we went over the top of the services, and we did all these different things. So again, you know, as the designer, what made this hard? You know, as a designer, what made it complicated? You know, as a designer, why you were so passionate about this. So the judges aren't mind readers. You need to express that the best you can. And sometimes a visual is important. Just say to yourself, if I'm a judge, do I get how hard this job was to design? And if the answer is no, go back and look at your submission and think about that. I do actually think as well, and you can see quite simple details. It doesn't need to be complicated. You know, I see some incredible 3Ds, as I said before, but yes, it's a 3D, but it's lots of foliage. So in that image or that plan, I'm not seeing the complexity of a deck, or how did I deal with that problem, or how in this case did I get a shower there but managed to capture and move water and pick it up under the deck, and what else we need to do. You know, how do we get the level changes between the spar dropping in and the actual timber deck seating area, and how do we make sure that we manage that? But this is also showing that we understand that how we describe this to a client to get buy-in, and how we describe this to a contractor. So this is an interesting one because it's not a big site, but I think at the end of the day, looking at the brief was important to do that. So they're the sort of basics of the plans. I think it's important us also to show you, if we can, Katrine, the photos, because the before photos and what we were doing on this does, I believe, I hope, if I was a judge, I would look at it and say, all right, look at the before shots and how does that actually work through. So you'll see we're sort of sharing some of the before shots now. And with that in mind, you can see, okay, what was there? What did we design? What didn't we design? And I think that's really, really important. And I think at the end of the day, it's understanding that if you can't demonstrate, which you should, on levels, that you should at least make sure that the pictures demonstrate clearly what you were trying to do. So I think that's very, very important. So when you look at the before shot here, if I didn't have that before shot, if I didn't have that angle, and that was the day that I actually met these clients and said, hey, you know, I'd love to work on this project with you. And that's when I went, I think this is going to be a really cool design. I think this is at some point going to be right for us to put in for the awards. So that's where I'm also saying to myself, where is my before shot? Where is my process shot? And where is my end shot? And I think that when I talk about it in the brief and when I talk about it in those stages that I'm going to seek marks on in my sort of checklist, I want, when I'm talking about the complexity of a curve or how we did that, I want to give the judge an understanding of how hard that was. And I need to show that by an image or what else we can do. So I really, really emphasize photographs in conjunction as a package. And I think that from my point of view, it's got to demonstrate to a judge that they would feel like they were the designer. They would feel like that they understood the narrative and they understood the process that would go through from a client's point of view, and the fact that good design is solutions and is creating solutions to our clients' problems. And so that's how I approach any design, and that's how I approach this project, and obviously the photos that we use. In regards to other points and tips, I would definitely suggest that you look 1 to 2 years ahead in all your projects if you're thinking about what you're putting in, and you might have a really good design now, but at the end of the day, it's just not ready. So don't do it. Hold, don't put it in. You're only going to disappoint yourself. Let that develop. And in the back of your mind, you might have 2 or 3 projects that you really want to focus on. And they're the projects that I know you do generally anyway in your business, but they're the projects that you would pop over, you would maintain, you would see, you would talk to, and stay in touch as you would with any client, but you know you've earmarked them, and you've earmarked them for 2025. That's when you've got that in mind. I've got projects at the moment earmarked for the next 3 years that we want to look at, but they're just not ready, and that's why we have gaps in our awards. Read every line, don't overcomplicate it. I think the narrative is really important for me when I look at projects. Give yourself time is one of the most important things I would say. We are not very good as designers, in that we're really good, we're creative and all that sort of stuff, but give yourself time. You need time to sit down and write what you want to say. You need time to digest it. I actually do start writing about, I create a Word doc and I start writing some of my notes and what I want to do. And I start writing my awards potentially 3 to 4 months ahead, because I just dump note ideas and I think about it. I also would strongly emphasize getting, the first thing you ever do is get your permission form sorted out. It's stressful, if not. I also, which is a bit weird maybe to some people, I actually write my brief and I give it to someone, not a judge. I give it to someone such as my wife and whatever else, and I don't tell them about it. I say, read that and tell me the image of the garden that conjures up for you. And I find that really works for me, because it's giving somebody who's not in our industry another opinion on the narrative of the space. And I think that's a really good thing to do. And that's something I've learned. Keep an eye on your word count, because I talk too much. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you don't have success, try again. And with another project, another year. And I say, really emphasize about waiting. So to me, tips about going in for an award is listen to Maureen. She's your best friend. Also, I would suggest that maybe if you see other people that have gone in for awards and been successful, call them. They're a colleague. I want people in for the award. So please, you know, I want people to be up against. I love that. It's a celebration of design. So maybe think about someone you want to give a call to and say, hey, you know, got any ideas, tips and tricks? But you're not giving away private information. You're not doing the wrong thing. But at the end of the day, look at the judging forms and really follow the judging forms. That's your Bible. Why business? Why do we go in for as our business? Why is it important for our business? Look, at the end of the day, there's clinical points here for a business. And so it raises your marketing profile. It brings you work. We had clear-cut examples how winning an award with the LDI has given us inquiries. Those inquiries have converted to projects. There is no doubt in my mind that if we are going along and we're chatting to a client and they have spoken to somebody else, maybe in that week, and I turn up and I'm holding an outdoor design magazine, I do this all the time. I say, oh, I don't know if you know, but an example of one of our projects is this. And it's amazing how a client elevates their sense of, wow, okay, you've been elevated straight away. It's not just their opinion. You must be good because your peers believe you're good. So never underestimate the fact that your projects will go into magazines, and it's worth weight in gold. Literally, it's worth a fortune. It will make the difference between getting work. We know that. Also, as well, it keeps the internal standard high for documentation. Like, we always look at it and say, is this documentation right? We look at LDI awards, and we look at it and say, all of our projects should cover those things. It doesn't matter if we're going to awards or not. It should be a standard. You should be delivering all that information. I think also as well, one of the things we forget is that when we win an award, it's great for us, but I can't underline enough on this. The clients over the years that we have given them such a joy, the Albany Street client, the Redfern client, there's so many clients that they're in it with us. So when we win an award, they feel the excitement. They also feel that, oh, okay, what do we do next? Yeah. So they love it. And I can tell you now, if you want to consider who your best marketers are, they're your clients. And I know through Albany Street, for example, that got us quite a few projects because she was so excited and told her friends about the fact that she's got an award-winning garden. It was quite incredible. She had an award-winning party, which is brilliant. But my point is, don't underestimate who's marketing your business for you. They're your clients. And that particular project, she sold that garden and the real estate agent put it in as gold award-winning garden. So it's amazing what traction you will get, and emphasize to your clients, this is the national landscape design. This isn't the inner west. This isn't, Sydney. This is a national landscape design. So, be proud of what you've achieved and really champion that. So from a business point of view, we have more contractors coming to us asking if they can build our gardens. Again, they're more people that do referrals. We've got people coming to us saying, yeah, we want to work at a standard. We want to actually build your gardens. So at the end of the day, it gives us more contractors. It gives us more flexibility. It gives us more pricing opportunities. It gives us more chances to, again, network. So again, don't underestimate your clients. Don't underestimate your contractors. Also, as well, it's quite interesting when you look at what you charge. So if you look at it and go, you know what? We've just won that award. We've just won this award. You then start looking at, what am I charging? What is my worth? What is my value? And it really is important for you to start thinking about the fact that it's a very unique award, and then it's not common. So really emphasize and understand how important this award is. The marketing circle is incredible, local papers, the media. So there's a clear connection, in my view, from getting work from entering into the awards, even to the point where you want to recruit and employ and engage staff. We're currently at the moment looking to engage in some graduates, and we have our awards on display, right? So the graduates come up and go, wow, how cool is that? I want to be part of this. I want to be part of the success story. So that's really important if you look at retention of staff, if you look at people wanting to feel part of this. People want to be part of something that is good. And I think, again, winning an award is actually very, very good for your business. Personal is different. At the end of the day, I remember the first time I won an award and I stood there and I could thank and say thank you very much to my wife. And at the end of the day, if you look at a personal point of view, the people that are behind the scenes that help us as landscape designers, do what we do. I think this isn't just from a business point of view. This is from a personal point of view, that the people around you, it's a way of saying, well done, great stuff, you're good, keep going, it's okay. It doesn't matter if you get a silver, a gold, a best, it doesn't matter. It's an incredible achievement. So internal positive morale is so important. And let's be honest about it, if you've got good morale and positive people, that is a good business decision. So that is, again, a bottom line decision and impact. It's nothing better than walking into the airport and the magazines going up to the stand, picking up a magazine, and then I've been told this to keep my voice down. When I shout over going to my wife, we're in the magazine again. How cool is this? It gives you a spark, a vigor. It's really good. Our awards are on display because I'm human. I walk up the stairs sometimes. You know what? Okay, maybe I'm not having such a cracking day, but every time I see that, I know what we're doing is great. And I know what I do is a good outcome. And every time I go home, I look at that and I look at the 2010 award, and that is the most important award to me personally, because it's my first ever award. And that was the one I never thought I would win. And that's the incredible daily pat on the back for me. That's so important for me to do that. And also as well, in short, it's for my guys. Like, I create a design. I do that. I've created a design or that design, and I've done the drawings, and I've done these things and whatever else. But at the end of the day, I'll still say to Katrine, and can we get those photos? Can we get them right? Can we do this? And, I want to put this in and all that sort of stuff. And so it's good team morale. And I think that it's not just about going into the awards, it's about attending the awards. It's about celebrating awards. It's about the fact that, I might have won an award today, but I want Callum or Katrine or someone else for me to be clapping them when they're going up and they're getting that award. I just think it's good for us as an organisation, as a business. So, look, my view on Outem Awards is, I'm pretty passionate about it. It's been extremely amazing for our business. I'm very grateful for it. I've always been extremely grateful to people that like Maureen, and I really stress that people will get support to do this application. It's not rocket science. You don't always win. It's part of being part of having a go. We've not always been successful, and we've been successful on a number of other occasions. So I think in summary for me, Paul, and for everybody of LDI is, look at it functionally, look at it as a tick box, get it right, bring a bit of passion to your application, be proud. And if you're proud of it, that's the best you can do. Put it in. The worst thing you can do is not put it in. That's the worst thing. But look at it from a business point of view, because it makes a massive difference, especially when you look at business cycles that we're going through. When you look at when you're a small business, when you're a medium-sized business and whatever else, it's really, really important. This is another marketing component. So at the end of the day, get your clients on board, get them part of it, get them part of the application, make sure your award. And it's also as well, I'd say to you, stress. It's not just winning an award, it's what you do if you do win that award. And it's also celebrating the fact that you've entered or you've been shortlisted. So it's not, I won a gold. Now, if I don't win gold, it doesn't really matter. No, if you're shortlisted, telling a client you'd like to go in for an award, national award, because you believe in what you've done and you believe in that client, that is good. So try and look at it from all levels, and also look at it from a personal point of view, because at the end of the day, we do this because we love it. And I want to continue loving it. And I think this is part and parcel of why we're part of the LDI. And I think that's very, very important. So would you make any other comments, Katrine, because you're sitting with me?
I think Steve's covered off everything, to be honest. My only additional comments just regarding photos, I guess, would be, which have been covered off before, but just more specifically, when you do talk about the client brief and your scope of works and the opportunities and constraints, I think the photos that you choose, because obviously you're only allowed so much. So be very specific in terms of the photos that you select. because I think it's important that you show a photo that you're talking about in your description, so that the judges can obviously relate and visually see what you're talking about. So that's really all I have to add. I think you've covered off everything else.
Yeah, so just make sure whatever you put in is considered, and whatever your design package is you selling yourself in front of a judge. So it's got to sell you. So treat it like whatever this package is, it's got to sell me and tick the box. So yeah, that's how I look at it. And when I click send to put it in, I'll say, you know what, can't do any better. That's my best shot, but don't do it short notice. Don't do it half-assed. If you're going to do it, treat it with respect, do it properly, and give it your best go. And just make sure you really have a good crack. And whatever the outcome is, it's better to go in than not go in. I would really underline that and take that from a 2010 application that I nearly didn't do. So that's really me.
That's it, Steve. You've got to be in it to win it, don't you?
That's what I reckon. Unless you have a go, you never know.
That's right. That's right.
Follow that one.
Now, Sally, Steve went through a lot of great points there. Do you have anything to add based on what he's spoken about regarding coming back to the judges, things like that?
Well, not really from my point of view. I just want to wish everyone good luck, and as Steve said, have a go at it, and yeah, hopefully you've got some pointers so that you don't lose marks for not sort of submitting certain things, and it gives you your best chance. So just good luck to everyone who's going to have a go at the awards.
Fantastic. And we do have some exciting new categories this year. So we've got our plantscape, which was really fleshed out, which I think plant design's really important to us. Landscape
Very important.
design. It's not a small part of what we do. So to break that up a bit more into a few more categories, to be able to really expand that, I think that's a really good thing for everybody. Yeah. Now, can I ask if anyone has any questions they'd like to put to any of our speakers tonight?
I do. Hi, Paul. Well, I guess this is a prompt firstly for Paul. Could you just explain a little bit more about the new category that you've introduced? The affordable creative one?
Yeah. So the affordable category is all about a design that had a super low budget, and it's about really
What's super low, Paul?
What's that? Sorry.
What is super low?
Something where your design really had to stand up and be quite dramatically creative to give the client something that most of the time you would have thought, geez, I can't even work with that budget. That's crazy. So it's something
like
where
one of
you
those top
really have to be an incredible designer to come up with something. It might look $1 million by any means, but it's all about how clever a designer you can be and working with such a limited budget, being creative with materials or species or whatever it might be to really give the client the biggest bang for their buck. It's very easy to make a design look fantastic if you've got a big budget.
I love that.
Yes, you do have to still be a great designer, but you have to be an exceptional one to pull off something with a super low budget. That's quite exciting.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think it was under 35,000, was it?
Guys,
right?
can I jump in? It's actually in the award booklet, those figures for the different categories.
Wow. Andrew, I love that top.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you. Yeah, so if you want to look at, there's 4 different figures: balconies under 10,000, courtyard, rooftop or small garden under 25k, mid large garden under 50k, and rural and regional garden under 75k. I think when we were discussing where we came up with those figures were obviously the affordability of those depends on the scale of the project and the complexity of the work. So we didn't want to see projects that were smaller in value not necessarily be assessed for their complexity of design and intellect in the application of the designers and the brief. So I really am looking forward to seeing some of the category, some of the entries for this one, because I think some of the feedback we got was that people just weren't feeling like they wanted to enter because they didn't feel like they would be able to compete with some of the bigger value projects. So this is
that's great. Yeah, that's a great idea. Well done, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Paul.
Super.
What else
Great.
did I have to say? I was wondering just maybe if we could get a little explanation on how they're judged. Like you've been mentioning points and things, like how they get you know, how you actually win a bronze, silver or gold, and also the Landscape Designer of the Year awards. Like how are they decided?
Sally, could I throw that over to you to tell us about that?
Well, in the design section, I mean, or the last year that we did it, there was 50 marks. So you went through and each, I don't know, are these available to the entrants to have a look at what the scoring system is at all?
Yeah, yes, the judging forms are all on the website.
Website, yeah. So
To look at.
Yeah.
So like there was a part A documentation, I think that was about 10 marks, and then there's a quality documentation, then there's a section on design skills. So I had a maximum 50 scores, 50 out of 50. So some sections, as I mentioned, like the design brief was 2 marks, the site evaluation was 3. So it's probably a good idea to have a look at those on the website, because it gives you a bit of idea of how much information is required and the importance of each of the sections. So someone else might be better to speak on the 80 to 90 and then the 90 and above and how all that works, but because there's a whole range or levels of awards.
Yeah, and we do have each entry is usually judged by 3 different judges, so that the scores are averaged over the judges, and then we work from that, the percentages for gold, silver and bronze. Bronze we introduced last year. We used to just have gold and silver, so we now have the bronze level as well.
No, that's great.
There's also the Alan Corey Award, which is judged separately, that has the separate criteria looking at whether the entrant meets the who's holding that trophy at the moment, Steve? I hope you're keeping it dusted.
Well, we were going to say it sits next to our lucky cat in the office, but yes, we say we'll post that back more, or come and I'll bring it to you and you have coffee. I'll give it to you. Yeah, no, so yeah, we'll post that back, of course.
Yeah, and that has special criteria. The entrants go in for that, and it's not automatic. If that's one very special award, and it's only given if there is an entry that's judged to be worthy of it. So it's a separate award to the rest, and the rest are very much based on the results we get from the 3 judges for each category.
And that's part of the reason why we introduced the landscape, commercial and residential designer of the year, just so that if there's not an entry in that year or entries and enough body of work to award that Alan Corey Award, that we still have a few really big awards to announce and to showcase our industry's work for the year. Because if we didn't have an Alan Corey and there was no one at the end of it with a big award, it would be a bit of a letdown, and you know, it'd be a negative part of the awards, both from being able to award someone as a designer in those areas. We really want to showcase our work every year, so that all the other industries aren't taking all the limelight. We've got so much great work and so many great designers out there, and it's really important that we actually have a few to put up on a pedestal and put on our feeds, social media, and for them to be able to showcase their work to their clients.
Yeah.
The other thing I was just going to say, I think Vanessa touched on before, the bronze, silver and gold categories. If you're interested, the percentages for the marks, basically what Maureen was saying with our judges, the totals of the scores up to 50 are all averaged out, and the percentages are from the 3 judges. For the bronze is 70 to 76%, silver is 77 to 84%, and above 85% is gold. So that's how we make the awards in those 3 levels. So you're not actually competing with another person or another designer to get that level. Your award is based on what it's judged for itself, not against someone else. We really feel that's a big thing, because it would be unfair if you came up one year against 20 really experienced designers and your design was amazing, but it was just half a point off and they all took the awards and you didn't. So
Yeah.
we try and award it in that sense for fairness sake.
That's great. Also, just going back to the marketing side of things, I wanted to reiterate the importance of including like social media tags and a really nice sort of description that we can easily use and adapt for marketing. So, and if you can, you know, if you list your contractors and anybody else that helped you, photographers and whatnot, if you can include your social media tags, it'll make people like my life much easier when
Absolutely.
we go to do that. So that would be really good. So yeah, just always have that marketing in the back of your mind when you're writing your briefs and things.
That cross promotion only helps bring the spotlight to your own business, doesn't it, Vanessa?
Yeah, well, that's why you do it. So yeah, I think that was the main ones for me.
Yeah.
One point I certainly did want to make quickly was about the exclusions. Steve, you mentioned it briefly, and so did Sally, that if there's something in a design that you didn't do, don't be afraid to say that you didn't do it, because often it can be difficult to do a design where you have to work with some elements. So that can actually be a promotion for your design skills, not taking away from what you're actually designing there. So don't be afraid to be clear what you did and what you didn't do. And that
I think that's a really good point, actually, though, Paul, because I think that sometimes people don't understand that, and also as well, you know, you didn't do the pool. Don't feel that, or if you sort of say that your design's not big enough or worthy enough or whatever, you know, it is the truth and reality of what you're doing, and be confident enough to be judged on what you are doing. And you're right, it can actually be and add value to your application if you're actually having to design around an existing component by someone else that adds that added creativity to your application. So I think you're right. Look at it that way rather than, I don't want them to think I didn't do that because that might reduce my judging points. That's not how it works. You know, understand what we're trying to design and look at, you know, and judge. So it's a good point, really is.
And then in terms of costing of the project, does that include, like when you say, you know, the cost of the actual whole landscape installation? So when you're entering your award and you say the cost of the project, is it only things that have been put into that design that you have designed? Or is it including, you know, the path and the stairs and the pool that someone else did, and, you know, it wasn't actually part of your design? Like, how do you work out the costing?
Personally, I just think at the end of the day, just be transparent about what it is, in my opinion, sorry guys, just about what it is. So if we've got a project and there was a cabana there or whatever it was, you know, we would turn around and say landscape design relevant to our commitment or whatever else. And that's what we're talking about. So I think personally, it's just relevant to what you've designed and what you've been part of. That's my opinion. So.
Right.
Yeah. Spot on. It's only about what you've designed rather than what the architect or the pool builder or whoever did. It's just about what you've nominated as your part of the design.
Okay, cool.
Especially where we've got those components of residential categories with budget in mind.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, I've got another quick question for you, Steve. If you're not sick of chatting to us, I want to know, how much do you find you have to change your design to clean it up to get it applicant worthy?
In
Do you have to tweak it a
2010,
lot?
No, well, no, because at the end of the day, what I have found is, you know, what I learned, and part of growing as a business, and as I am as a business operator as well, is that, you know, our internal process means that if I've got to change, I've got to change, and my change is on my plan. So when it comes to our application going in, it's really, you know, cleaning off the private information and whatever else. And it might be a case that we need to note on there that this had changed or that had changed. But really, what I learned from 2000 when I first started getting into it was, if you plan and prepare and you're organized, which has taken me a lot of years, as Katrine's nodding, to be more organized, it's the same attitude. If it's in our standard system, we have our landscape plan, our detail plan, our schedule, our whatever else. So we pull from that. And so, you know, when I turn around and actually I have my awards folder that I start dropping stuff in. So I just don't look at this that I used to many years ago about, oh my God, the awards is in 3 weeks. I've learned. So now I look at it and say, you know, we might note it on our job board. What are we looking to bring in? Let's wait. Okay, we're scheduling for a photo. Let's do that. The guys were out today at a project. I asked them if they could just check in whether or not it'd be photo worthy at the moment. And, you know, we're just sitting here saying, no, it's too far. It'd be next year. So I think that, you know, I learned that from somebody that's very successful in the awards. And I looked at the times I wasn't achieving a good outcome. And I went up to that person at the event night and said, what is it that you do that I can do? What is it that you can tell me that would help me be successful? And that person said, plan ahead. I know what award God I'm putting in 2 years ahead. And that stuck with me from that moment. And that's what I do. So that's why I say, if you're not sure, go and talk to someone. The best guidance is your friend and colleague, and that's your colleague in the LDI. I mean, that's what we do. So, you know, at the end of the day, learn from others, learn from people that are successful, ask them questions, but try and keep it as part of your system. Like, keep it as, because otherwise what it does, it turns into, if it's you on your own, which has been me on my own, it's like, oh my God, oh, it's not worthy enough. I'm not going to put it in for the awards. And that's such a shame. But if you have some planning and you really reflect on it, then that's part of your journey to put it in. And so it's part of your marketing, it's part of your overall experience. And so you start looking at the LDI awards as, it's a major point in the calendar, it's an exciting point in the calendar, looking forward to seeing all the people I've got going along, looking forward because I've actually got, I suppose, some skin in the game because I've got a project that I'm really excited about. And again, book a table or book some people and take your team. But yeah, you shouldn't have to do some radical changes. I haven't had to do radical, but 2010, there was a very different experience than it was the last few years. Learn a lot. So changed a bit in 2010, but not now really. So that answers that.
I actually think that by entering an award, this is my own experience, that you actually teach yourself perhaps what are the things that I've missed in that particular award entry that I need to build into my day-to-day work in every
Absolutely.
project. I think it's actually sharpens you up in the practice.
It does.
By entering an award.
It does. And that's what I was saying earlier in my tips, because for me, it was when you start looking at ticking the box, and that's why I think this is so important, as potentially, if you haven't got an internal process, this is a really good structure to look at your internal process and say, okay, I should have all this as part of my internal process anyway. So I actually look at it and go, it's not just about the awards. What can I take out of this experience and what can I learn from? And I think, Andrew, that's such a valid point, because certainly with new categories, and certainly if we're looking at members that maybe have looked at residential design, that might want to consider balcony, or might want to consider commercial, might want to consider other things, it's a really good reminder of what you need to be doing. So yeah, it's a really good point.
Paul, I've got a question for someone else. I know it sounds funny, but I actually do. Someone asked us at a coffee catch up recently. You might have heard it, you may not have, but how does it go? And this may be for Sally more than others as a judge, with regards to the 3D and sectional elevation component of the design. What about hand drawings? How does that, go with judges scoring? Does that get marked lower? How does that work?
Look, you rarely get hand drawings these days. I think sometimes it means there's going to be a lot of extra work for some of the things that you need to put in, but I certainly wouldn't mark someone down if their hand drawings cover off everything that's required. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been in the industry for a while, still prefer their hand drawings or use CAD drawings and actually hand color in things just to make them a bit more interesting, a bit more creative. But I think that it probably makes it a little bit more difficult for the amount of things that you're required to put in. But I certainly wouldn't mark someone down if their hand drawings cover off on all the criteria that's required.
Right. Yeah. Look, the member was concerned that, that they didn't learn CAD or 3D rendering perspectives and whatever, and they don't engage someone to do that. They prefer the hand-drawn side of that finish of their work and have done that for years. So they were worried that if they submitted an award with that kind of presentation, that it wouldn't sort of rank up there with some others who do. So that's good to know. Thanks.
But I suppose the hard thing, as I was mentioning before, if you have to make changes, and Steve mentioned this in his 2010, like I was saying, that particularly over the COVID time, whatever, sometimes it was difficult to get certain plants or even materials that you're importing from overseas in the last couple of years. So you had to make those changes. It would then be important that you actually made notes if there were changes to those plans.
Yeah.
It's very difficult when you're marking and you've got a set of plans, and when you look at the pictures of the finished product, they look totally
correlated.
Yeah, so that's what's tricky.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Do you have to have 3D drawings, like especially with these new category? Like, what if the clients don't want to pay for the 3D drawings? Do you have to have them?
In our set, you don't have to, but section and elevation drawings, they certainly make a big difference for the client to be able to visualize. So you don't have to have the 3D. There are certainly a lot of benefits from having them, but I agree that, as you were mentioning, Vanessa, that if it's a really low budget, then people don't want to be paying for those extra sort of qualities that certainly add to, I suppose, the visualization we were talking about before, that they might just be happy with a 2D plan. But in the design section, it does mention that you need to include at least the minimum of a section or elevation drawing.
Sections and elevations are relatively easy to do. They're not overly
Yeah,
complicated.
Well, they are a 2D format, but
I think at the end of the day, it's like you put your best foot forward, and I think that is part and parcel, as you just reconfirmed. It's a really good point. Hand drawing with creatives, it's about getting the point over, and it's about clarity of documentation, and we can do that. And I just think if you're making an application, as you were saying, Sally, we want to encourage applications. We want to encourage people to go in, and I think just that's something they should be able to do. So if you go for it, give it your best shot. So okay. Well, hopefully that was helpful.
Beautiful.
Yes,
Fantastic.
very good.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally,
So,
Maureen.
quick question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Before I let you, are we going to be having a big celebration awards in person this year, or what's the story?
Paul?
Watch
Putting
this
you on the
space.
spot.
Still
Looking
under
forward to-
development. Yes.
Under development. Okay.
We're working towards it. Absolutely. We're positive for it. We've got some dates earmarked, and we've got a venue earmarked, and the team are working through it at the moment. So we're looking forward to having that at the end or in the new year.
Brilliant. Looking forward to seeing you all in person. It's been great. Thanks for the time today. I really appreciate it.